Welcome back. Don't laugh over there. You make me crazy. Everybody, welcome back. This is episode 2. Last time you joined us, I was with my friend Chi, and we were talking about comic books and Chi's comic book. And this time we want to talk a little bit about Star Wars. Seems to be the hot topic of the day, especially here on YouTube. So, what is your opinion on the current state of affairs in the Star Wars universe?
Well, here's how I have to relate to it. I mean, I always say I'm not a big fan of Star Wars, and that's mainly because the first Star Wars I ever saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi, and I think I saw it around the age of 5 or 6, so I was a little too young to catch on to the Star Wars train. I caught it at the very end of it. I mean, of course, as a kid, you see that movie, you want to grab a lightsaber and run around and hit things with it. but that's really what it is, right? But the thing is, that was kind of my memory of it as a kid, and when I first came to America at the age of 9, you find very little Star Wars product, That was 1984. The Star Wars products started disappearing from most of the toy shelves and stores. But what was coming in was G.I. Joe and Transformers. So I grew up really more of a G.I. Joe Transformers guy. That's why I always say I'm not a big fan of Star Wars.
You're never a huge Star Wars fan.
Because it didn't hit me at the right age.
Well, you're 5 years old, and Jedi's the first movie you see. That's kind of like, I don't know how to swim, let me jump in the deep end of the pool.
Kind of, yeah. Also in the theater, there's things that's happening, you don't know what's going on. Why is Han Solo and Carbonite? Who are some of these characters? You weren't there from the beginning of the journey.
Oh, that sucks. Well, when Star Wars was originally released, I was 9 years old, back in 1977. So I'm dating myself. I'm an old bastard. Hey, it happens. And if you're a young bastard, guess what? It's going to happen to you too. So experiencing Star Wars for the first time literally was life-changing.
Oh, I believe that.
Now, I love Star Wars. I always have, but it doesn't have that same place in my heart that Star Trek does. Sure. I've always been more of a Star Trek fan. I grew up watching Star Trek, the original series, and even though I love Star Wars, you've never seen anything. Star Trek was more reserved, and the special effects are from the late 60s, whereas the special effects that they had in Star Wars in 77 and on was just unbelievable, groundbreaking. And I remember to this day sitting in the theater watching Star Wars for the first time, and when they're going through the Death Star, it was like being on a roller coaster ride. You thought you were sitting in the cockpit of the X-Wing fighter. It was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in a movie theater in my entire life. And then, of course, we had Empire, which was Empire, one of the greatest movies ever made. Return of the Jedi wasn't as great, but I still kind of loved it. There was things about it I didn't love, but, it was part of the original trilogy, so you kind of, love that, too. My opinion on the current Star Wars is not a great opinion.
I don't think it is.
Especially now, okay, if I had to give an analogy for the Lucas Star Wars when he came back with the prequels, it's almost like, oh, hey, there's a beloved friend coming back to visit me. Oh, what happened to him? Oh, he had a really bad head injury. And now he's the same person, but he's not. So you still kind of love him, but he has, it's just not right.
Not able to function the same way
He's
anymore.
Not there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. But actually, the new Star Wars makes me appreciate that Star Wars a whole lot more than I did before, because the new Star Wars, the only analogy I can give to that, it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it looks like my Star Wars. It's got all the elements of my Star Wars. It's just not. There's something that's not Star Wars. There's something missing. It's like I said, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. My beloved one is gone, and there's this thing that looks exactly like them, but it's a horror in disguise.
For me, I watch these new movies, and I don't get any excitement. I would sit there, I would watch it, go, yeah, this is very well done, the effects, the sound, and everything, but it feels very empty when you see it.
Special effects is special effects, where especially the ILM is going to be ILM, but
sure,
the new what was the first one of the new trilogy?
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens. The first 10, 15 minutes I was watching, I was like, oh, 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 you get all these feels, like you're getting kicked in the feels, and then you kind of like, it dawns on me that I'm being played.
Yeah.
And the moment it dawned on me I was being played, it's kind of like when you realize the game is rigged, and you just want to flip the table and hit somebody. Well, I don't mind so much Rogue One. At least it was kind of self-contained.
Sure.
But the last Star Wars, what was that? The Jedi? What is it called?
The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi was so god-awful terrible that I just, if it wasn't the only TV I owned in the house, I would have just smashed it to pieces. It invoked one of those feelings. Now they're on to Solo. I haven't seen Solo yet. You've seen Solo.
I've seen Solo.
What is your opinion? What is your little review of Solo?
Well, I saw Solo. I thought it's better than the other three that came out in the Disney era. I actually, thought I didn't find too much problem with it. I think it's a good looking movie for the most part. But the thing is, once again, I watch it and at the end I say I don't have any real emotions. Besides, okay, I enjoy the experience. But there's no, there are moments that make me feel thrilled or feel sad for certain character development or have any emotional up and down. It's almost like I watch it with a flat line.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is see, and it's not because what I said before, I was never a big Star Wars fan. In recent years as an adult, I can go put in the original Star Wars trilogy. I put in A New Hope, the very first one. I am still amazed at every shot, every angle, when they have either the Star Destroyer coming in the very beginning or the first time they power the lightsaber. But what really amazed me is looking at how did they achieve this kind of effect back in 1977, and your brain couldn't wrap around these things. Nowadays, you look at any of these movies, yes, this is CGI, or this is you kind of know how Hollywood movies are made with big special effects, big budget, and I think that takes away a lot of the wonder about these movies, And then you look at Solo, where you're thinking, this is made 30, almost 40 years later compared to the original Star Wars, and it's not better overall.
No.
Besides, they're spending more money. There are things that look better, but as a whole, as a product, it's not. It's kind of like people talk about, when I used to have a Tonka truck, it's made out of metal, it's durable, it's great. But now Tonka trucks are plastic, and it's
how
just
did that
not the same.
happen? Why did they stop? The best part of the Tonka truck was that it was made of metal and the things were indestructible. Trust me, as a child, I couldn't break them. I tried.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's why they turned to plastic, because it's like the Maytag washing, the commercial with the Maytag repairman.
Yeah.
If the Maytags never broke down, he hadn't have a job, and if the Maytag never broke down, they can't sell more Maytags. Well, if the Tonka trucks can be handed down for generation to generation, like a cast iron pan, who's going to go out and buy another Tonka truck?
Sure.
Do they still make Tonka trucks?
Yeah, they're all plastic now. They're all plastic. Well, but that was the analogy I would give, is that you used to have something as a fandom you couldn't break it. It was unbreakable. It was well made. These new ones, they feel flimsy. There's something not right.
It's like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
And not made with the same...
And it just degrades after generations of being copied.
Well, it's not made with the same material, not made with the same kind of passion and love.
Yeah.
I know a lot of fandom out there has given George Lucas a lot of crap in the recent years. But when you go back and look at the original one, and this is why it amazed me, this is one guy who just wanted to do this. He was fighting the studio. He was fighting, the lack of money and budget and even the technical how to make it happen. And look at what he delivered in 1977. And every frame, you can see that kind of meticulous thought and care put into it. The new stuff, it's like nothing hits you. Not a single thing hits you and say, my God, how did they do this? Oh wow, look at that. Look at the way they're able to get that, that effects, the little light glimmer coming out of a Star Destroyer engine.
Yeah, well, now, because back then you didn't know how it was done, so it evoked wonder and awe.
But I tell you,
now some guy sitting on a sweaty ass working on the computer making CGI. There's no, you've pulled back the curtain. I can see the Wizard of Oz is just some old dude pushing buttons.
But I tell you, I looked at the original Star Wars now. I still don't know how it's done. That's why it's mind-boggling. When back then you look at some of these effects, you go, they were just models hung on wires, and they shot it against a blue screen, and then they do some, photo tricks to make it work, and it still looks better than half the stuff today. It has feelings in it. Now you look at the stuff, there's no feeling.
Yeah, well, it has a substance and a quality to it.
Yeah, you can tell somebody labored over those things. Like they were fighting to get this stuff done, and then everything they put on there is the best they can put out there on screen. Because there was always talk about how in the editing room there's a lot of stuff cut out that were just no good. So whatever you got as a movie every shot was the best and the only good thing they could use.
You know what it's like? Here's an analogy. What you're saying about back then and the way they make it now. Look, I'm an Italian from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my grandmother came right from Italy. She taught my mother how to cook.
Sure.
My mother taught me how to cook. Now, you've tasted my cooking.
I've tasted your cooking. They're fantastic.
Yeah. Now, if you tasted my mother's cooking, forget about it. So, you look at this now. This Star Wars now is like, to an Italian, it's like going to Olive Garden. when an Italian, a real Italian, especially one from New York, looks at Olive Garden, it's like we see the golden arches. No, that's not real Italian. I've never gone to an Olive Garden. I won't, because my mother will spin so fast in the grave she'll pop out and go into orbit. So,
well in my opinion,
so what would you say?
In my opinion, I'm going to say Olive Garden is not that bad. I've had it a few times.
Well, all right, you're Chinese.
Yeah.
So what would you say? What would be your analogy of, like what I'm giving?
Panda Express.
Oh.
Every time you send me into a rage, of rants when you talk about Panda Express.
That's like the rage now. I've never been to a Panda Express. What is it?
It's a Chinese food chain, fast food chain across the country. It doesn't taste like anything. It doesn't taste like Chinese. It doesn't taste like Chinese takeout. It doesn't taste like any food out there. It has its own weird taste. And I've tried it many times. I always go there. Every once in a while, I would go in there and say, "Hey, maybe today is better. Maybe last time I was wrong. Maybe my palate was a little off." And you go, "My God, it's the worst thing ever."
So you've gone back?
Well, I tend to give it I always think maybe there was something wrong with me that day.
No. You've gotten real Chinese food. Well, anything in this country isn't quote unquote real Chinese food.
Yeah.
But you've gotten real American Chinese food. It's run by Chinese people. And when you have to beg for those extra packets of soy sauce, that's authentic. Because they will fight you when they want to. You're not going to charge me for that. You've got crates of those. Just put them in there.
Oh no, it's like everywhere. When you go to McDonald's in Asia, whenever you ask, whenever you get a hamburger, you ask for ketchup, they throw you a pack, and it's always go, "Can I get some more?" They'll throw you another one. But that's just the Chinese mentality of operating a business.
Yeah, one packet's not going to cut it. So on a rating scale of stars, of 1 to 4, what would you give Solo?
1 to 4, I'd probably give Solo 2.5, probably.
That's a little bit above average.
It's a little bit above average because the previous 3 that came before really there was nothing there. This one at least it's like, sure, it's not great, but it didn't have nearly as many problems. It didn't try to be this. Either a copy of the original trilogy, down to the T, or it didn't try to be a little too high concept. It's just like, okay, we got a movie, we delivered it, and you didn't walk away thinking, boy, I got cheated. Okay, that was good enough.
Rewatchability. Would you want to see it again?
I have not seen any of the new Star Wars again, so it's about the same.
So that's not good.
I mean, I can't think of a reason why I want to go back and see it again.
Yeah.
I saw it on matinee. I didn't pay full price.
Okay.
And it's not like I felt like I want my money back. But the thing is, would I pay money to see it again in the theater or rent it? Not really. Maybe if I go to one of my friend's house and he's happened to be on TV, I may sit down and watch that. That's how I feel about it.
So it's one of those, if it comes on cable, it comes on TV, and it's on, leave it on.
Just so happen the TV is on, maybe I'll leave it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not bad. So what did you love about it? Was if anything, what did you like about it?
I thought, compared this one to previous 3, and a lot of the little stuff in the background felt more real and alive. And it's a hard feeling to describe. Because when you watch something like Force Awakens, you'll see Last Jedi. Whenever they have a scene with a group of people in the background, you feel like they're being directed. Like it felt like actors saying, okay, you stand in front of this council, you hit the keys, or you do this and that. You make yourself look busy. And it felt like it's very, very, very staged. But in this movie, every time you see something moving around the background, like there was a scene in the beginning where they're at a spaceport where people are kind of moving in and out. It felt like the stuff in the background is pretty real. It felt like people really going somewhere, doing something. And the best experience that I can relate it to is like watching the 1978 Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, where every time they cut to the Daily Planet, it feels like it's a real working newspaper company. People are doing something. Even when they come in an elevator, the way they walk, the way they move feels alive.
Yeah, man, until you said that, I was thinking in my head, well, because you never think that's a movie being filmed on a set.
Yeah.
You think that, you almost think to yourself, are they going to get in trouble for being there filming that?
Yeah. But that's what it is. If you ever see any of the behind the scenes, that's a set. Everybody in the background is an extra. Yeah. But in those movies, it's funny. It's almost like something Hollywood lost too, because in those older movies, you look at the background when people do something, it feels connected to what's happening. There's a liveliness to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I liked about the new Solo. A lot of those scenes, I go, ooh, it feels like they're live. And I probably would credit that all to Ron Howard because he's more of an old-fashioned director. So he probably, knows
can capture that old time feel.
Yeah,
from
that
the
kind
80s.
of technique and the way they manage extras is probably like that. Because nowadays a lot of stuff is done on CGI. They don't have to really put anybody there and tell them what to do.
Now, were there things you didn't like, or even better, was there anything that like maybe you hated to the point where you wish you had a butcher knife to hurl at the screen?
I would probably say the Robot Lives Matter robot that appeared in the movie.
Oh no! I've only heard about this. I've heard people saying that it's the worst Star Wars character yet, and to top out Jar Jar Binks would be miraculous. Is this actually true?
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad because it took me completely out of the movie. Because the voice they cast it for didn't fit. It felt really like I'm watching a totally different movie, different character that came in from elsewhere. The character's behavior is so erratic and so over the top. It also didn't fit with the rest of the characters and the acting in the movie. So those are just the very surface problem. It was like every time that thing come on, you're kind of like your brain goes into a blank, going, "What the heck am I watching?"
So it's not the droid you were looking for.
Definitely not the droid we were looking for.
Okay. Well, that kind of wraps up, I think, everything we can talk about with Star Wars. Well, what is Star Wars to you, listener? Is it the greatest thing in the world? Are we wrong? Are we right? Is it Olive Garden? Is it Panda Express? Do you want your money back? Tell us how you feel. Leave it in the comments below.